Welcome back, class 10, your history class. Today we will start with a new chapter, United Nations Organization, chapter 14. Now, the United Nations Organization is an international organization including almost all sovereign states in the world. So it is an international organization where all the sovereign independent countries are members, almost all. It was established, why was it established? To maintain world peace and secure the economic, social and political conditions under which this can be maintained. So it was established to maintain peace and security all over the world in the respect of economic security and peace, social security and peace, and political security and peace. Now, there must be some circumstances leading to the establishment of the United Nations Organization. Why was it established? Before going in depth in the objectives and the various principal organs of the United Nations, one should know why was it established? Why? What was the necessity? The first necessity was there was a fear of death and destruction which the world has seen in the two world wars. The world left a legacy of misery and depression in nearly every country. Many cities and towns were razed to the grounds. Countless industrial estates and business centers were destroyed by bombs. So the world said it was enough. They needed an organization which would control the superpowers and different countries so that a third world war does not break out. Second was, the most terrifying weapons is the nuclear weapon. A nuclear war would be an omnicide. Omnicide means death for all. So, an organization which is strong enough should be there to monitor the countries which are accumulating nuclear arms, and it should never be used. So, some organization which is strong enough should be there to control it. Third important point, a very important point, is that failure of the League of Nations. The League of Nations was born after the tragedy of the First World War. Unfortunately, it was not able to control the acts of aggression in 1930s. So in September 1939, Second World War broke out, and the hopes that the League would be able to preserve peace was completely shattered. So the failure of the League of Nations is very important point, because since the League of Nations failed, a stronger organization, which is the United Nations Organization, was needed to be formed. And fourthly, and very importantly, is that an organization should be there which will help in building a durable structure of peace and security in the world. Peace and security all over the world is of utmost importance in today's world. Besides widespread destruction, the wars aroused suspicion and encouraged arms race. There was suspicion that every country was suspecting the other country would attack. And in that respect, they started collecting and accumulating arms. So this is known as arms race. The world leaders were desirous of a world free from aggression. They wanted a world which would be free from aggression. So they strove, that means they strived, to build a durable structure of peace and security in the minds and hearts of the people across the world. A long drawn out deliberations led to the establishment of the United Nations. So these are the circumstances which led to the formation of the United Nations. Now we know the background, why the United Nations was formed. Now we can dive in to the objectives and purposes of the United Nations. The preamble and Article 1 of the Charter lay down the objectives and purposes of the United Nations. Now, number one is to save succeeding generations from the scourge of wars. Succeeding generations, the generations which are going to come, next generation or future generation, they should not go through the horrible result of this horrible war. Second point is to maintain international peace and security and to take effective measures for removal of threats to the peace. In second point, there are 2 points included. Number one is to maintain international peace and security. So the United Nations organization will be responsible in maintaining international peace and security and to take effective measures against whom those people or those countries or those organizations who are or who would or who will pose a threat to the international peace. So any organization or any country which are posing threat to the world peace, they should be dealt very strictly. Third point is to develop friendly relations among nations. Friendly relations should be developed among nations, cooperation and love, mutual respect, and to achieve international cooperation in solving problems of economic, social, and cultural character. So various problems, economic problems, social problems, cultural problems, these should be sorted out in an amicable way, peaceful way. For this, the organization was formed. This is the objective. Fourth objective is to establish conditions under which justice in respect of international law and international treaties can be maintained. There are international laws, laws between countries. There are international treaties. International means between countries. For example, there might be some business treaty with India and some other foreign countries. So who will look after, who will maintain the treaty? Obviously, both countries will maintain, and there should be some organization which will supervise it. If the treaty is broken, or if any norms of the treaty is broken, the United Nations can intervene and solve it. Number 5 is to create faith. Faith should be created in human rights and in dignity and worth of human person. There should be faith in human rights. Dignity should be reinstilled. Worth of human beings should be reinstigated. The organization should see that the worth of the human beings, the dignity of the human beings, the human right, these are reinstigated and they are followed. Number 6, to promote social progress and better standards of life in larger freedom. So there should be social progress and better standards of life in larger freedom. Then, number 7 is to harmonize, to bring together, coordinate, work together the actions of nations in order to attain these mentioned aims and objectives. So, what can we say in conclusion of the objectives, regarding the objectives and purpose of United Nations? We can say that the objectives and purposes tell us about the United Nations principle. In order to achieve objectives, the UN, that is the United Nations, is required to act according to the principles. And basically there are 2 principles. One, all states are sovereign and equal. All states are independent and they are equal. And number 2, member states, that means the member countries, should fulfill the obligations faithfully. That means they should settle their disputes in peaceful means and should give the United Nations every assistance in any action it takes. So it is the responsibility of the countries also, or the member countries also, to follow the instructions given by the United Nations. Although they are not legally bound, but United Nations is such a powerful organization in restoring the harmony and peace of the world that the member states, they obviously follow the United Nations because it's a very important organization, internationally very important organization. So these countries, the member countries, follow the instructions of the United Nations. So today we started off with the United Nations. We discussed and understood the circumstances which led to the formation of the United Nations. We also understood why United Nations was formed, and then we discussed the objectives and purposes of the United Nations. In the next class, we'll start off with the principal organs of the United Nations. Namely, we'll discuss the General Assembly, the Security Council, and the International Court of Justice. So, these are the principal organs of the United Nations which we will discuss in the next class. So I hope you have understood today's class. Thank you. Thank you very much.